and the final speaker of this session, and I would like to mention that we actually are now almost on time, just off by 1 minute, is Ivan Netkach from the High School of Economics, who will be speaking about the syntactic position of the numerative complex in Indonesian.
So we can get started, and while the handout is being distributed, I'll give some basic stuff on Indonesian. So Indonesian is a Malayo-Polynesian language, and it is spoken in Indonesia and in Malaysia. And so, in fact, in this talk, I will merge the Indonesian and the Malay language, although there are, of course, some differences. And so, the main source of data were the texts found on the internet, but some examples were listed. And so, what's the problem? Well, in Indonesian, a numerative complex may either follow the noun or precede it. So, one can say dua ekor kucing, 2 cats, or kucing dua ekor. And so, my goal is to establish the difference in meaning between the two constructions, and I will also consider some related constructions, namely those involving the floating of numerals. Okay, so first I need to make a really short note about the morphosyntactic status of numerals in Indonesian. So in Austronesian languages, numerals often have the properties of verbs, and in Indonesian too, numerals have some verbal properties. And so they can be used predicatively, as in example 3, or they can have the relative clause as in 4. And so, in fact, I will not consider those uses of numerals. I will only consider those examples where numerals are used as modifiers. Okay. So, the order when the numeral precedes the noun is basic in Indonesian, and in fact it is used very, very frequently. And apparently it can occur in all the contexts, in all kind of contexts, regardless of semantics and of pragmatics. But the order when the numeral follows the noun is much more rare. So Nancy Conklin was the first author to consider this issue, and she suggested that when the numeral is postposed, it is focalized. But I think that this generalization is a little bit too straightforward, so we'll need to refine it a little bit. So my main point will be that it is not the focus that determines the position of numerals, but the specificity. So when the numerals are postposed and there are no other elements like demonstratives or that kind of stuff, so in such contexts, the nominal is non-specific. So consider the example in 5. I saw the skillful Abel throwing 5 fish per throw. So this is the distributive context, and in such context the nominals are non-specific. Or the same stuff you can see in 6 or in 7. That man will be fined 3 pigs. Or how can Klinking catch 2 mouse deers at once while he's now chasing only 1? Okay. And the same in 8. So usually 2 eggs are given to the crocodile, and it's like any 2 eggs. These eggs are not definite. But there is a problem, because if we look at the texts, we'll find some clearly specific nominals encoded by this word order. For example, in 9. In the moment of arrest, the police also arrested the following evidence: 3 cows, 1 motorbike, and etc., etc. So the 3 cows is a clearly specific nominal. But if we look further, it is not really persistent in discourse. So after that, it's only mentioned once, and it disappears. And so we know that such nominals that are not persistent in discourse are often encoded in the same way as the non-specifics. So in fact, this is not the problem for my suggestion. Okay. And the standard word order can in fact refer to both specifics and non-specifics. So look at the examples 10 and 11. They're not very interesting. And so the figure 1 is the most important. It shows the distribution of the two word orders with respect to specificity. So now let's turn back to the focus. Well, let's define what we will consider as focus in this talk. So the focus can be defined as the semantic component of a proposition whereby the assertion differs from presupposition. But in my talk, I will use a modified definition, and which does not in fact contradict the first one. And this definition is as follows. So, focus of a statement is that part of the utterance that answers the question under discussion. And so, in the examples that will follow, I will present the reconstructed from the questions under discussion that were in fact reconstructed by myself from the wide context, as all these examples are from text. Okay, and we will see that in fact focus also plays a role in the placement of the numeral. For example, when the numeral is postposed, often the whole nominal is in focus. So consider the example 12, and so the 12th example is from Bible corpus. Jesus asks them, "How many breads do we have?" And they answer, "Well, 7 and a few little fishes." Okay, so a few little fishes. So in fact, the quantifier for a few, which behaves like numeral like, is postposed, and we see that the whole nominal is focalized. And the example 13 is pretty much the same. Usually, 2 eggs are given to the crocodile. The question under discussion is what is usually given to the crocodile. And sometimes, when the numeral is postposed, a so-called VP focus is involved. So consider the example in 14. The question under discussion is, what animals are there? And the answer is, hari ini ada sapi 3 ekor. Engak ada kambing hanya sapi. So we have today only 3 cows and no goats. And clearly the whole VP is focalized here. Okay, but sometimes we can find out that it is not the nominal and it is not the VP that is focalized, but the numerical complex, as in example 15. Sedan and station wagon, but it's some Wikipedia article about cars, very interesting one. So sedan and station wagon have 4 round front headlights, while hardtop has 2 box front headlights. Okay, so we have seen that when the numeral is postposed, some kind of focus is involved. It mustn't be a focus on the numeral, but it can be, but the whole nominal can be focalized, or the whole VP is focalized. Okay, now what about topic? Well, as some authors have shown in their work, the initial argument in Indonesian and Malay language is always topicalized. And also, this also implies that this argument must be specific or definite. And we have seen that the construction where the numeral follows the noun is used with non-specifics, and also it involves focus. So our prediction will be that such constructions will be impossible in clause initially. And this is in fact true. So the speakers do not allow the sentences such as the one in 16 or 17 two terrorists have been arrested today, it's not okay to say teroris dua orang, so have the numeral postposed. Or it's not okay to say saudara laki-laki dua orang with the numeral dua orang with the numerical complex postposed. Okay. But all these things are not really unproblematic since, well, in Indonesian, numeral can float to the right periphery of the clause, so generally they can float out of the nominal. So in the examples that we have seen, it is not really clear whether the numeral is NP internal or NP external. So consider the two possible analyses in 18 and 19. Well, in fact, in Indonesian, the demonstrative is considered as the rightmost element of the NP. So we could use demonstrative to establish the constituency, but in fact we cannot, because as we have seen, when the numeral is postposed, such constructions occur only with non-specific entities. So if you use the demonstrative, it will imply definiteness, and it will radically change the semantic and pragmatic properties of the construction. And so, in fact, I haven't yet get any idea how to establish the constituency of the NP. And well, I will abstract away from that issue for now. Now let's talk a little bit about floating numerals. Well, in Malay-Polynesian languages, numerals can float from their nominal head, and it's attested in many languages like Tukang Besi or Nias. And in fact, in Indonesian, the floating of numerals is possible too, but it is not so common. Okay. So there are, in fact, two kinds of constructions with floated numerals. Numerals can be on the right periphery of the clause. You can see the example of such construction in 22. And numerals can be adjacent to the nominal. You can see the example of such construction in 23. First, we'll consider the numerals that are rightwards, that are floated rightwards. Okay, so it seems to me that the movement of the numeral to the right periphery of the clause is motivated by the information structure. As we will see, it occurs only in contexts where the nominal is topicalized, but the numeral is in focus. So the nominal and the numeral do not form a single information unit. And okay, so look, for example, at the example in 23. The question under discussion is, how many Sumatran rinas are left now? And so the answer is, now only 2 Sumatran rinas are left. Kini badak Sumatra di Malaysia tinggal 2 ekor. So 2 ekor, which is the numerical complex, is floated to the right. And apparently, although I didn't really like study this subject in a really concise way, when the numerals are floated to the right periphery of the clause, some kind of exhaustive interpretation arises. So in fact, the speakers translate the example such as the one in 23 with like some restrictive particles like only or the stuff like this. And so maybe this is an instance of so-called identificational focus, but I don't really know. I'm not really sure about it yet. And we can see also that when the numerals are floated, they are often focalized by means of restrictive particles, like in 24. Dan pada tahun, I don't really know how to read this numeral because it's too big. Dilaporkan burung ini hanya tinggal 6 ekor saja. So hanya is a restrictive particle and saja is a restrictive particle, and 2 restrictive particles. And the same stuff is in 25. only 10 friends of mine came to the party. And so, in fact, this is not unexpected for the floating quantifiers, because pretty much the same occurs in other languages of South Asia, for example, in Thai or in Burmese. Like you can see it in the example 26. Okay. And now let's consider the related constructions, namely those where the numerals are adjacent to the noun. Well, in fact, they are pretty much the same, because in such constructions, the nominal is apparently topicalized and the numeral is focalized, so nothing unexpected. And I would like to concentrate on the examples 28 and 29, as I'm getting slightly out of time. We cannot topicalize the nominal together with the floating quantifier. So we cannot use it clause initially as it is used in 29. Tidak lama buaya itu 2 ekor muncul. So buaya itu 2 ekor muncul is clause initial, so it's preverbal, and so it's topicalized, and that's why it's prohibited. So this may show that my hypothesis that the floating quantifiers, floating numerals are always focalized can be assumed to be correct. And okay, so the third C, we'll skip it. And at last, I would like to talk a little bit about the headedness in constructions with numerals. Well, Indonesian is a right-branching language, so that means that the dependents occur. Occur after the heads that they modify, and so this suggests that in standard construction where the numeral precedes the noun, like 2 ekor kucing, and we remember that it's really standard and it can be used in all kind of contexts. The numeral is seemingly ahead of the NP, and so how can we account for this? Why the numeral is head in that construction and not a modifier as it is expected? Well, we can say that it's an instance of so-called headedness effects, and these effects may be due to the relevance and to the so-called compositional obligatoriness. And compositional obligatoriness, we can define it in a rather non-formal way. Well, it may be thought to be a matter of connecting an expression to its immediate context. For example, the determinants, articles or quantifiers, are compositionally obligatory since they define the reference of the noun. And so I suggest that the headedness effect in constructions with the numeral preposed to the noun is due to the fact that, in fact, in this construction, numerals are determinant-like. So they can restrict the reference of the noun, and that's why such nominals can be definite, specific, and so there are no any restrictions on the reference. While in the constructions where the numeral is postposed, the numeral is not determinant-like, since these constructions are always non-specific, and so that's why it loses its head-like properties, and that's why it's moved rightwards. Okay, and so the conclusion. I've shown that the standard word order where the numeral precedes the noun can be used in all kind of contexts with all kind of reference, both specific and non-specific, and apparently it is not really sensible to the information structure. And the standard word order where the numeral follows the noun is primarily used with non-specifics, and this construction also implies the focalizing of numeral or the nominal or the whole NP. And numeral can also be floated out of the nominal, and the floating of numerals is apparently motivated by information structure, since in such context the numerical complex is focalized and the noun itself is topicalized. And in standard constructions with the numeral preceding the noun, numerals head the nominal, and the headedness effect may be due to like determiner-like properties of the numeral, since the numerals in such context are compositionally obligatory. Yes.
Thank you. Perfect. Dima, what's first?
Actually, two questions. First of all, do you really presuppose the rightward syntactic movement, not two leftward movements creating the same effect? Because this may be very well relevant to the analysis. And the second one, if Indonesian is right mentioned, why its determinants are on its right periphery? Well, this is a more answerable question, but still.
So did I understand it correct that the first question is why do we assume that the numerals are floated to the right periphery and not the nouns? Well, in fact, I have not the answer to this question, because I don't really think about it in terms of movement, because it was not within the transformational framework, so I cannot really answer this question. And the second one was, could you repeat please, because I managed to forget it.
If the language is right mentioned, why its determinants are on its side,
on the left side.
On the right. Determinants are on the right side.
You mean the demonstrative is determinant?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a nice question. Well, I think that yes, this point is is a little bit puzzling for the account that I proposed. Well, yes, I think that I should mention this in the final version of that work, because that's a problem, really. Thank you.
So I think that the relation between the possibility of the split of the nominal complex into the numeral complex and lexical NP or support output is related to your to non-specificity, not because of interpretation, but because of the structure. You could say that non-specifics are small nominals and they have no DP or like projection, and that's why they can split. And if you have a definite interpretation, you have to have a DP, and then cannot move something out of the norm. Did you think about it?
So if I have a DP, I cannot move, but I think that the data are that when the nominal is definite, so the numerals are moved out. So numerals are moved out to the right, out of the definite nominals.
You can't split, can you?
They can split.
So you said they can't split. Yeah?
So I mean, if you say something like cats live in the house too, or something like this, with the numeral floated to the right. So the nominal is definite and topicalized. And so in that terms, it's
house two. That means house number two.
No, I mean
Cats.
Cats live. So it's like literally.
Cats.
Imagine that I read the glosses. Cats live in a house too. Well, the quantifier is floated, and the nominal is definite here, and so
it's not. Sorry, it's not obvious that this is actually one NP, because it can be a topicalization construction in this case. Just like as for cats, there are two, and then
you mean that
it's a hanging topic or something like this.
It can be outside of the clause.
Yeah, or left periphery. At least they are two different NPs.
Okay, yes,
which
but
are not linked by any direct structural relationship, whatever framework you assume. So
Okay,
S for
yes.
cats, like in Chinese or in Japanese.
Like in Russian.
Yeah, like in Russian, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, Alexander, did you have any more? Or you're finished? Okay, Lyosha?
And I think I have a question on the data, or maybe I missed some of your points. So what I lack is an explicit assertion whether non-specific topical noun numerative complex order is allowed or not. In other words, I'm wondering whether the focus sensitivity is hardwired into grammar, or is it just an epiphenomenon of the fact that non-specific noun phrases are tend not to appear in focus, but they certainly can do that sometimes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point, because I have thought about this too. Well, it seems that specificity and the focus are intercorrelated, so specifics are often focalized, and
But only often, not always.
yeah.
Something like, we need 2 tables for a coffee break. So how many people do we need to carry 2 tables?
Yeah.
Non-referential to tables.
Well, but they are topicalized. Okay.
Yes, they are in the background part of the clause.
But I think that it will be hard to make such sentences in Indonesian, since the topic of the sentence must be, it's like, it's not a tendency, it must be specific and definite. So you can't say, you can't topicalize the non-specific.
This complex do not have to have the grammatical position of the subject of the topic. So
Okay.
I guess that there are some background, some positions in the clause for background and nominals other than the first position.
Okay, that's a nice point. I think that I'll verify it. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, Hannah?
Vanya, I'm wondering, what is the position of modified adjectives in Indonesian? Is there any?
It's like girl, beautiful, post-nominal. Yeah.
Post-nominal. So I was just wondering whether when you have the noun and the numeral complex afterwards, and even the determiner or this, how do you call it, demonstrative pronoun, all of them may be modifiers, like adjuncts. Both are phrases, attached to the noun, not modifying the noun, and the whole thing is a noun phrase, let's say. Okay? And when you have prenominal numeral complex, then it's a kind of a determiner, so it's the actual head of the phrase. So I think it's more or less like Oliver said, maybe, that in one case it's a noun phrase with modifiers, and in the other case it's a DP with the numerals in the determinant position, or something like that. Maybe that this numeral complex just requires an additional layer of structure. So, yeah, maybe I just re-articulated but yeah, so that would be
Okay.
my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. But I think we'll talk about it after that,
Yes.
because I didn't really get it yet.
Any other questions? Well, if there are no more questions, then let us thank the speaker again.